Trust and business management and the changes to business management. These are from pages in an old book I used to teach from. As big businesses growing, trusts are being formed. Trusts are when businesses come together and agree to not compete. Even though they're in the same industry, they should be competing, they agree to not compete. And as a result, you have a few companies getting powerful and more rich. Standard Oil and John D. Rockefeller is the first trust in the nation, but they're not the last. From 1898 to 1903, there are lots of new trusts formed, so much so that by 1904, 40% of American manufacturing companies were part of a trust. And what you end up when you have trusts, these big, powerful trusts can drive everybody out of the industry. You end up with an oligopoly. It's similar, it's close to a monopoly and has some of the same problems. Rising prices, falling wages, and declining quality of goods. When you have an oligopoly, you have a few companies dominating, and that's what existed in the railroad industry, in the steel industry, and in the oil industry. In fact, by 1901, 1% of the American corporations were making 50% of the U.S. manufactured goods. This even extends beyond American borders, with companies like United Fruit gaining plantations in former Spanish colonies, and U.S. Steel fixing prices with foreign companies, kind of making a trust with foreign companies. Investment firms, big bankers, played a part in these formations of trusts and other structures to decrease competition. People like J.P. Morgan and other firms financed mergers and reorganizations of businesses, and what they established were called interlocking directorates. That's where you had some people sitting on the board of directors of multiple companies that were supposed to be competing. Now today that's illegal, but the effect at that time was, because you had one person who had power and influence in multiple companies in the same business, they're not going to be competing. There's a debate in America over these trusts. Many critics point out that they lead to higher prices, they lead to loss of individual business power. Others are saying they're a mark of the times. They are a trend that is seen in America and its economy as well as worldwide, and they're producing more goods. And it's a complex debate. Next unit, when we talk about the progressives really liked efficiency, and in some sense, trusts were very efficient. So some progressives were okay with some trusts. Others want reform. Let's move on to changes in management. There is a shifting change in business management as we reach the latter half of the 1800s to speed and product, not workers. Businesses are no longer trying to make a unique product. The goal now is to make uniform products all the same, because those can be produced faster. And the assembly line is going to be essential to this, but also the industrial research laboratory, research and development, as businesses call it today. General Electric, GE, is the first to have one of these such laboratories. It's where they where they improve the light bulb and develop the cathode ray tube, which will be used in the first televisions. There's a picture of it there. Businesses are also becoming more large scale. By 1920, 50% of American workers worked in plants or factories that housed over 250 workers. These are large-scale operations. And 30% of the American workforce worked for a company that had multiple plants. So your business owner wasn't just at one facility. They moved around the city, around the state, maybe even around the country. Business is also becoming more mechanized, and there are entire materials plants created. For example, to create glass. We have an automated glass machine created by Irving Colburn, and it runs constantly. And it was later bought by Henry Ford to make windshields. Because all of this is managed from the top down, where rules for the workers are coming from the central office. The central office, the management of the company, is going to manage production and workflow. the workers lose control of the workplace. They have less and less control as time goes by. So it's not surprising to make more money that management, for example, sped up the machines in the factories. From 1909 to 1919, the assembly line in auto manufacturing plants increased in speed by 4 times. All of this is part of what's called scientific labor management. We're shifting from workers setting the pace in the workplace to what's called scientific labor management, or Taylorism, after that guy there, Frederick Winslow Taylor, who wrote extensively on the subject of maximizing efficiency from each worker. And some of the core tenets of Taylorism are that management, not the workers, should be responsible for job knowledge. That means the rules, the how-tos. These are not things that should be left to the workers to convey to new employees. And second, that management controls the workplace through enforced standardization, making everything the same. They're going to require the adoption of best implements, best working conditions, and best practices. This is enforced throughout the corporation. So, if you like using your old hammer, it doesn't matter. You may have to switch to a standard hammer size number 8 because that's what the corporation has established. This Taylorism is very influential through numerous industries. As a benefit, workers produced more, and in some industries that meant that they maybe earned more. But the hardships probably outweigh that. There is a definite dehumanization of labor. Workers go from being craftsmen to now even more just part of a machine. And as a result, there's some considerable lost pride in workmanship and the honor of the work that you do. There are some unsettling experiments done with new tools and methods of efficiency, and work becomes even more monotonous. As it becomes monotonous and workers get bored and the machines are sped up, it becomes dangerous. There are more injuries and more deaths on the job site. The worst accident of the era probably was the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in 1911 in New York City. In that tragedy, 146, mostly women, mostly immigrants, died when the factory that they were working in, which had the doors locked to prevent theft and keep out labor organizers, when that factory caught fire. And the lack of sufficient fire escapes meant that almost all of the workers inside perished. There's a huge funeral march held throughout the city. There's a citywide strike. Speeches are given, most famously by this woman here, Rose Schneiderman of the Women's Trade Union League. She said politicians have not done enough. Our political leaders have not done enough. And as a result of that pressure, the governor of New York appoints a state factory investigation commission, which soon after recommends laws in New York City to shorten the work week and improve safety in the workplace.